Further ado, Jeff, please. Would love to hear your story.
All right, thanks, sir. Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Just so I can kind of understand the audience, World War II veterans, Korean veterans, Vietnam, more recent conflicts, Gulf War, Somalia. Okay. Did you hear when the colonel and the sergeant major and the corporal got captured? You hear that story? Oh, the colonel and the sergeant major were going out to visit the troops. They were doing battlefield circulation, and the corporal was their driver, and they got captured. And they said, well, hey, you guys have one last request. We're gonna shoot you. You get one last request. Corporal, what do you want? And he said, well, I want all you can eat pizza and beer. It's been a while since I've had that. And he said, all right, we can make that happen. And the colonel, what do you want? The colonel said, well, I just want a few minutes to talk to my troops and impart upon them the leadership lessons I have gleaned over the last 30 years and inspire them with a few words of wisdom. He said, okay, we can make that happen. Sergeant Major, what do you want? He said, I want you to shoot me before the colonel. All right, so I'm not going to be that kind of colonel, all right? Two of the greatest speakers on earth, Abraham Lincoln. He spoke in the fall of 1863, 272 words. People remember what he said today, right? Only took 3 minutes. Over 2,000 years ago, Julius Caesar spoke for a couple of hours and his best friend stabbed him in the back. Killed him, all right? So I don't want to be that kind of speaker either. What I want to do is just tell stories. I didn't want to do PowerPoint, and I don't think anyone wants to come to a lecture, you know, or a sermon. I mean, that's for tomorrow, right? It's just stories. And some of my stories will have themes that you'll remember from your experiences if you've gone to war. Some of them might be new because you've never gone to war, and some of them might be brand new because you've never served in the military. I'm not special in any way, and my service isn't special. I'm telling you right now, people esteem the modern generation of service members because we stand on the backs of heroes, of giants. Everything, goodwill that the American public feels about the Marine Corps, it's because of guys that hit the beach at Iwo Jima. Guys that walked through the forest of Vietnam, the guys that froze their butts off in the Chosin Reservoir. All the veterans that went before set the bar pretty stinking high, all right? We're just trying not to screw it up. We're trying to at least get to that bar that you guys set for us. So very humbly, I'm telling you, thank you. And my service isn't special, I just did what I was told to do. In my family, there's a long history of being drafted, honestly. I was the only one in my family that wasn't a draftee, so everyone kind of looked at me weird, like, why'd you join on your own? You know, all of us got drafted. We sat out, my family sat out the First World War, but every other war back to the Revolution, we fought in. And I've tried to hold up my end of the bargain in the recent conflicts. My dad was a draftee in Korea. Some of my first things that I knew what was the military was seeing his clothes in the closet, his Army uniform in the closet. So I'd go to my little junior Encyclopedia Britannica and figure out what was the Army, and then, okay, well, what's the Marine Corps? And I kind of stopped there and didn't want to look anymore, and that's where I ended up going. It's a dramatically different going to war experience, I can imagine, as a draftee than it is someone who volunteered to do it. So my experiences will be from the volunteer perspective. It's also a really dramatically different experience going to war as a young guy, somebody in your teens or early 20s, than it is as an older guy. So my first time that I got to go to war was the Gulf War, and I was 24, 23, 24. And the last time I was 47 or 8, and 4 times in between, so 6 times total. And each time there was things that were the same, and there was things that were very different. When you're going for the first time, man, you don't know anything. You're like, well, what's it going to be like? And I can remember that feeling when I was a young lieutenant. What was your concept of war the first time you went? You didn't have one because you'd never experienced it before. So movies, TV, hearing stories of veterans, and honestly, most of the veterans don't talk about it. So you didn't hear very much, you know. I mean, my dad's stories, you know, were don't volunteer for anything, and it stunk, and I wanted to go home, you know. That was about this. Well, Dad, tell me some stories, and you know, that was about it. He wouldn't talk. So your imagination kind of goes wild because you don't know, you don't have anything to fill in the blanks. So is it going to be like the movies that I saw? Is it going to be like TV shows? I don't know. It's all brand new and very different. But over the course of my life, green light. You want me to go back? Okay, we'll start over. Did you hear the one about the colonel? No, don't do that. How about this? No, I can hear me. Can you hear? Good.
Well, it went out again.
Green.
It's
No,
bad.
you're good. No, I'm good. You're good. It's back on.
So no one practices a sport to never play in a game. You don't spend hours and hours and hours practicing. You know, what do? Well, I just practice. No, you want to play in a game. And you want to play in a game to measure yourself, to see how good enough.
Yeah, there you go.
Am I good enough?
Yeah.
And it's that strange feeling. I'm scared and I don't want to go, but I really, really want to go because I want to do my job and I want to see if I'm good enough. I don't want to leave loved ones behind, but I've got these loved ones on my team and we're all going there, so I want to go with them. It's a conflict. It's an internal conflict. How about if I put it there? Super loud. I don't want to deafen everybody.
You can give it the other mic.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Some-
That's all right. When they critique me, they're all going to say it was awesome anyway. Please. Okay. How's that? All right. Keep trying. So there's a conflict inside. And as a young guy sitting on my sea bag, single, I saw it in all the married people. I saw the wives crying and girlfriends crying. And the Marines were kind of like, you know, hey, it's what I do. I want to do it. I don't want to leave you. So it's a conflict. And then when you get to wherever you're going, then you start filling in the blanks. And, you know, after I left the Marine Corps, I was a cop. And I'll tell you, I think it's harder to be a cop than it is be active duty military and go to war. When I went to war as a single man, I didn't have any problems back in America. All my problems were in front of me in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. I didn't have any cares or concerns. As a married person going to war, it's a lot different feeling. As a cop, it's every day where you're at. There's no break. So I thought it was easier going to war because you can compartmentalize and focus on what's my job at hand, because I don't have to worry about what's going on back home because I can't do anything about it. It's very different. I can remember in Desert Shield and Storm, you could just find anything to write on. I mean, we had this like a box of Tide or something. I ripped the box open after it was empty and wrote a little note on it and put, military postal system, and it got to my folks. Yeah, it's amazing. But you're doing Skype and video conferencing in 2012. I kind of like the old-fashioned way better. I kind of like mail call and getting mail. I kind of like not seeing and hearing about all the challenges. It helps compartmentalize. It's harder when you can Skype and video. And I know the loved ones want that, but it's a lot harder on the service member. It's a lot harder. It's a lot easier just getting mail every once in a while. It's a lot harder seeing someone live on the camera and your kid crying. It tears your heart out. I think back to the Gulf War and what was it like. The military did more with less. And in 2012, we did more with more. More with less military. I dug a hole and put the same shelter half over my head that you used in Korea. Same two-man shelter half. When it rained, it was wet. When it's dusty, we were dusty. When it's cold, it's cold. When it's hot, it's hot. It's kind of like driving a Jeep. You want to know what it's like? That's what it's like. 2012, a contractor shows up and builds this tin can city that you live in. And you might go outside the wire for a few days to a firm base, but then you come back and you're living in a can city. Back in Desert Storm, my shower was, I'm going to leave this canteen out in the sun all day so it gets warm. And before the sun goes down, I'm going to do a canteen shower. And I only did that if we had plenty of water, because if we didn't have plenty of water, I was drinking that. All right. 2012, some contractor showed up with a comfort trailer, and there was hot water, cold water, and no wind hitting me because it was all inside. So doing more with less, doing more with more. So the creature comforts were a lot nicer if you went back to the main base. I mean, out in the hinterland beyond the wire, it's the same. It's the same. It's hard living. But back at the base, a lot different. I think one of the starkest differences between going to war, Persian Gulf War, going to war 2012 iteration of Afghanistan, is when I was a young lieutenant going to war, who do lieutenants look for leadership? I looked to my platoon sergeant, my staff sergeant who had 13 years in because I only had 2. I looked to my battery commander who had 10 years in, the captain, because I only had 2. I looked to my battalion commander, 20 years in, because I only had 2. And you know what? Everyone knew exactly the same thing about going to war. 0. There might have been 1 Vietnam vet in the whole battalion in 1991. That corporate knowledge of what going to war was like had left, and no one had experienced it. So none of my leaders or mentors could advise me. It was all new to all of us. Well, fast forward to 2012. I'm a seasoned veteran of going to war. I'm much more able to advise the younger guys who have never done it before. because of, and trust me, I hate that we've got 2 decades of war experience, but it's, at least we were able to help people not learn by discovery, and they could learn through teaching and sharing and things like that. So what's it really like? And this is different for everybody, depends on where you were and what you're doing. I can tell you what it was really like. It was always, some things always the same, some things always different. You usually got not much sleep, and you usually were under really stressful conditions, and you're doing dangerous things, and sometimes the chow was good, sometimes chow was bad. It's just kind of hit and miss. But one thing that was in common is you were more afraid of letting your comrades down than you were the enemy. The enemy didn't scare me half as bad as me being afraid I'm going to let my teammate down. And that was the same no matter when. I think that anytime you're getting shot at, the first time, you don't know what it is. You're like, oh, I don't know what that was. And hopefully someone smart next to you grabs you and makes you hug Mother Earth and says, you know, you need to point that thing in your hand that way and start pulling the trigger, because you don't know. You really don't know. But you get it real fast. I mean, it's one of those steep learning curves that you get and then you don't forget again. And I can remember the first time someone standing there saying, well, is that incoming or outgoing? And he got tackled real fast, you know, and I saw that and like, well, I'm getting down too, and figured out real quick what to do. But as you experience it again and again and again, you kind of know that becomes muscle memory. So you don't have to think anymore. It's muscle memory. And no matter how much practicing you do, you need to feel, okay, my life's in danger. What am I going to do now? Because it's the fight, flight, freeze. You know, you're going to do something from your what's it called? The lymphatic? What's it? Limbic system. Your limbic system. Your limbic system from when we were cavemen said, there's danger. What are you going to do? I'm going to fight. I'm going to flee. I'm going to freeze. What's it going to be? So those are your choices, and you hope that your training has taught you to fight. But you have to overcome that initial fear. And it's the same no matter what, if it's a dangerous. It doesn't matter if you're in uniform or not in uniform. I think that the threats that we faced in the Gulf War were easy threats. They were easy threats. Everyone we were fighting was wearing a different kind of uniform, and they were in military vehicles. Real easy to figure out who the bad guys are. Fast forward to 2012. The people we're fighting aren't wearing uniforms. They're not in military vehicles. In fact, sometimes they look like farmers and sometimes they look like insurgents. Which is it? Well, how about if they have a gun in their hand? Well, everybody over there has a gun in their hand. Well, what are they doing with the gun? Well, we got to watch them. It's hard. Oh gosh. This is addition, subtraction hard. It's a uniformed enemy with military equipment. This is doing calculus in Chinese in the mirror backwards hard, trying to figure out who's good and who's not good, when they're good, when they're not good. And the Vietnam veterans will say the same thing, I'm sure. It's much more challenging to figure that out. In addition to the challenges of you're afraid not to let your teammates down, you're focused on doing your job, you're trying to figure out who the enemy is because it's really difficult. You've got rules of engagement. And I thought I understand what rules of engagement were until I was a police officer, and then it's really restrictive. I mean, you own every bullet that comes out of your gun, and you can get sued civilly. It's super hard, super restrictive being a police officer, and that's good. It's super restrictive and hard in the military because I don't want to make more enemies by killing the wrong people. I don't want to turn someone who's sitting on a fence into a bad guy because I inadvertently killed the wrong folks. So super, super hard. Some of the same challenges that I'm sure veterans here have experienced. My base was attacked in 2012 by insurgents. They were all wearing uniforms just like me. The only difference is they had sneakers on instead of boots. But they were wearing, it wasn't just like me, they were wearing Army uniforms. But they snuck onto the base and destroyed 8 Harriers and killed, one of my friends that I'd known for a long time. So the enemy, I think, has gotten smarter. I think that they've looked at us over this course of time and gotten smarter. All right, what's some other things that's about going to war? Sometimes it's a surprise that you're going. I can remember being on the golf course at Carswell Air Force Base, August 2nd, playing 18 with my dad because I was home on leave. We just got back from Okinawa for 6 months, and I get a call. Davis Foursome, report to the clubhouse. This was before cell phones, by the way. So we go to the clubhouse. What's going on? Call. You're supposed to call home. Okay, Mom, what's going on? Somebody from your work called and you've got to go. What's happening? Oh, Saddam Hussein at a weren't planning for that. We had Saudi Arabia, what? We were thinking about Russia, right? It was the Cold War. We were thinking about North Korea. Saudi Arabia, Saddam, who are those people? What's that? It was a very unplanned event, right? I've seen pictures of ticker tape parades, but it was amazing to see the reception. It was much different. I think the country was still, had those feelings about 9/11. It's very different.
Ask him if he's got a green light on him. Jeff, do you have a green light on your thing?
No. You guys are giving me all, I'm breaking them, or you're giving me?
No, I was watching your finger.
Oh, did I touch it?
Yeah.
Shoots.
Yeah.
It wasn't Marine proof. You didn't tell me not to touch that.
Put it on safe.
It wasn't Colonel Performer proof. Anyway, I wanted this to be conversation, and I've already talked way more than I should. I really have. It's not coffee and lecture, it's coffee and conversation. So I want to hear what your questions are, what your stories are, and we can talk together. I want it to be interactive. Or we can just go eat donuts. But I really wanted it to be coffee and conversation.
What's your view of the strength of the Marine Corps today? Men and women, their morale, support.
So I think I can look at what it was like a long time ago, back in the 80s and now. The military we have, and I'll speak to my service specifically, it's second to none. It really is. It's second to none. The young men and women that volunteer to do it, they're better trained, they're better educated, they're better equipped, they're better led. They're the best. And I'm not saying they're the best in comparison to, it's like, who's a better quarterback? Roger Staubach or Terry Bradshaw or John Elway. They're all in the Hall of Fame. They're all good. We had a Hall of Fame military in World War II, Hall of Fame military in Korea, Vietnam. These guys, though, they're good. They're well trained and well led, well equipped, smart. I think as I look at war and conflict, there's things that are always the same. You always won't have perfect intelligence. Your plans will always not go as planned. The enemy will always do something expected. All those things will always happen no matter what the conflict is. But you'll see, I think, more the enemy thinking about more ways to attack us where our weaknesses are instead of attacking our strengths. It's not gonna be tank versus tank. It's gonna be some cyber computer guy making our tank not work anymore before it even rolls off the assembly area. It's different. I think people have watched and studied. IEDs is a good example. You know, IEDs are something that relatively easy to make. And it's a threat that absolutely stopped us in our tracks until we figured out how to counter it. And the good thing about our nation is we'll eventually figure it out. We put money towards it, brain power towards it, and we'll figure it out. But in that figuring it out process, guys like you and me are, you know, out there, you know, hanging out there and sometimes getting hurt and killed. So, all right. Yes, sir.
Going back to your recollections of that first Gulf War, I remember the great concern about encountering chemical weapons on the battlefield.
yeah.
I wondered if you could give me
Oh,
your
gosh.
recollections of training and
Oh, gosh.
what your fears were, yeah.
There's nothing scarier. There's nothing scarier than chemical weapons. Period. There's nothing scarier. And knowing that he'd used them against the Iranians, and he'd used them against his own people. So we had lots of chemical training. They gave us pills that, they said, here, take these pills. What's it for? You need to take them? Is it gonna go on my medical record? No. So we all of us kept the little container that it came in that had the name on it. I still got it at home, just so I can show the VA someday. I don't know what it does, but they said it was gonna help. I've gone to war twice wearing chemical protective overgarments and that. Both times was against Saddam. Once going into Kuwait, Gulf War, once going into Iraq, 2003. And you're in that for at least a week, trying to fight. And really, honestly, the fighting part isn't the hard part. The hygiene part is the hard part. How do I go to the bathroom, you know? I mean, honestly, that's the hard part. You can sleep in the thing, fight in the thing, it's hot, it's uncomfortable, but the hard thing is doing, you know, normal human stuff that you have to do. Yeah, it's scary stuff, man. Ooh. I was glad to go to Afghanistan and not have to worry about that. Yeah, for sure. That's a good question. Yes, sir?
When you went into college, or into the Army right out of college, did you plan to make it a career?
Yeah, no, but I like most Marines, if I'm preaching this wrong, tell me, and if I'm preaching it right, say amen.
I don't tell colonels what to do, sir.
This is how the Marines get you, all right? You walk in, I want to be a Marine.
Who are you?
Are you good enough? I'll show you I'm good enough. We'll see. But I'll show you. I want to be part of the best. Yeah, we'll see. That's how they get you. That's who they want. They don't promise you crap. It's not in it for benefits or education. It's, are you good enough to become a Marine? You don't join the Marines. You don't. You join the Army, join the Air Force. And I love you guys. This is how our service recruits. Are you good enough to become a Marine? And I bought that hook, line, and sinker. I did. I swallowed it when I was 5 years old.
I got kicked out of
Yeah,
Sunday school.
I did. I got kicked out of Sunday school. My Sunday school teacher, my wife's heard the story. When I was 5 years old, my Sunday school teacher, Maggie Holland, said, "You just got a song that they want to sing." A little Sunday school song. She was thinking. She didn't say that. She said, "You just got a song you want to sing." I stood up and sang all 3 verses of the Marines hymn. She called my mom. I got kicked out. It's true. But from that age, I wanted to be a Marine. And my dad was PFC Davis, he said, "I will beat you until you're black and blue if you enlist. If you're gonna do it, be an officer." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I did an ROTC at college and became an officer. I had no idea or vision of anything beyond about a week in front of me. I mean, I wasn't thinking long-term at all. I was hoping I could get to the next week and not screw it up. I'm a lieutenant and I wanna be a good platoon commander this week. What do you wanna do next week? I wanna get to Friday first before you ask me that. I wasn't thinking about being a colonel, no how, no way. I didn't think, I probably didn't, when I was a young major, I had a guy that sat me down and said, hey, what do you wanna do in the Marine Corps? And I said, I wanna be with Marines and keep doing what I'm doing. And he goes, no, sit down, we're gonna talk. And I give that guy all the credit because he helped me figure it out from there. But I didn't think I was gonna be a colonel or anything.
But you didn't stay 20 years probably, when you first went in.
I stayed 28 and I got out because I didn't wanna go to the Pentagon. When I was a young captain, I had a squadron commander who had made colonel and he'd never been to the Pentagon ever, and he'd never done joint duty. And I said, if he can do it, I can do it, that's my goal. I never wanna go to the Pentagon, I wanna stay out in the fleet with the Marines, and that's what I was able to do. But I had to quit at 28. If I'd stayed to 30, they'd just send me to the Pentagon.
Did you have a mentor, someone that you really looked up to in your 28 years?
I sure did. I'll tell you his name. His name's Keith Stalder, call sign Shadow. He's a Hornet pilot and the greatest leader I've ever met in my life. And you would follow him because you loved him and you didn't want to disappoint him and you didn't want to let him down. And when you can get people to follow you because of those things, you are like the maestro leader of all time. And Keith Stalder, you had a guy that spoke here, Gary Kling, Static.
Yep.
Okay, so Static and I were in the same squadron with Keith Stalder when he was a colonel. And just to show you what kind of leader General Stalder, he later retired as Lieutenant General, what kind of leader he was. In that squadron Gary and I were in, I think we're up to 11 generals now out of that squadron. And dozens of colonels. I mean, so he put his fingerprints on people and made them better and changed them for the future of the Marine Corps. So yeah, I'd absolutely say Shadow Stalder. Yes, sir.
So tell us about how you became, or came to be commanding an air wing.
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm not a pilot.
Yeah.
I flew drones before they were called drones. They were not sexy or cool. They were horrible, crashed, and technology deficient. But that was the only thing I'd ever flown in my life. I was part of the wing, but I was on the ground side of things. Air defense missiles, radar fired, shoulder fired, command and control, close air support things. And my boss at the time, the wing commander, said, I want you to command an aircraft group. And I looked at him, I'm like, you sure? And he goes, yeah. And it was a composite group. It had Hornets, it had C-130s, it had C-12s, communication, air traffic control, engineers, security. And it was a cobbled together composite group for a no-notice deployment. And I think he asked me to do that because I had been, you know, you can grow up two ways. You can grow up very narrow, all I'm gonna do is my thing, whether it's fly or drive a tank or whatever. It's my job and that's what I'm gonna fixate on. And the way I grew up was, I wanna do my job really well, but I wanna know what everyone else's job is. Because if I do that, I can be a better teammate and better helper. And I think that's why he picked me. It didn't, I don't think it made anybody mad, because I think they all knew I was an okay guy. But I feel like I got to do a lot of fun things as a non-aviator. I was the first guy to be a battle captain directing aviation that wasn't an aviator. I got to, do the group, and later the deputy commander of a wing in Afghanistan. But again, That was because of experiences and mentors I had had. Put you in that same situation, you could have done it, you could have done it, you could have done it. It wasn't because Jeff Davis is, you know, a great guy. I was lucky to have those experiences and those mentors. Yes, sir.
You brought up earlier about being able to communicate with your family, you know, cell phones and whatever you had over there, the computers and everything. I've often wondered why, after we got over there, why didn't we take out the cell phone service to the people we were fighting against? It seems like that was their means of communication, or was it because it was easier for us to tap in to hear what they were doing?
Oh, I don't know, but I think you probably make, if you took a kid's cell phone away today, that's worse than beating them. I think.
Well, these kids.
Yeah. The way the Iraqi, and I guess for that matter too, you can't, that's how they do stuff. They don't have landline phones. They don't have the same mature infrastructure and modern infrastructure.
But that's what the bad guys were using. Now, weren't they, and still are, detonating the IEDs with cell phones?
So you can detonate IEDs a lot of different ways. You can do a command detonation where I'm pushing a button and it explodes. I can do a timer. I can do a pressure sensor. I can do a radio signal or cell phone signal. A lot of different ways to detonate those. And you know, some you can counter easier, some you can counter harder. For the cell phones, we eventually had jammers that we put on our vehicles. It would jam that signal band, so it would prevent it from doing it. But yeah, for everything we come up with, the enemy's smart. They're not dumb. They're going to try to figure out a counter. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I just want to compliment you as a young Marine and how you relied on your senior enlisted to teach you. That's such a great part of an officer.
Well, I'll tell you, Staff Sergeant at the time, Kent A. Smith, who later retired as a master gunny. My first day with the platoon, Kent A. Smith said to me, "Lieutenant, this is your platoon, but you better not do anything without talking to me or we're gonna have a problem." And I said, "No problem with me, Staff Sergeant, that sounds good." I mean, I looked at it like, I'd really be a knucklehead if I didn't listen to someone who's got more experience than me. And I said, "Okay, no problem." And I said, "As long as, I get the final say, we're good." He's like, "Yeah, no problem. You always have the final say. You just better listen to me first." Good. But you know what? He never let me down. And because he never let me down, that conditioned me to the next time I was in that situation to trust the guy. Next situation, trust the guy. If I had a bad platoon sergeant when I was a young officer, I'd have turned out horrible. But I had a good platoon sergeant, and I had good NCOs too. I had some of the best NCOs you could ever want. They helped train me, and I tell them as I talk to them later in life, you guys ruined me. Because everyone later in life, that's what I expected out of a sergeant, out of a corporal, out of a staff sergeant, because you guys ruined me. You set the bar. And in my mind, hey, a sergeant should be like Sergeant Thurber, corporal like Corporal Armetta. You're not, what the heck's wrong with you? They trained me. So to their credit, and I really, truly believe them. Yes, sir.
Today's threats, like China, Iran, Russia, politics,
Yeah.
whatever, should we as a country be worried?
Oh, man. I know it's someone else's worry. I know that there's smart guys worrying about it. Some of my friends who are generals are worried about it, and I'm glad they are, because they're good guys. I'm telling you, they're good guys. If you want Davis's opinion, and unvarnished, doesn't represent anything except me, any democracy's greatest threat is internal. It's not external, it's internal. our greatest threat is ourselves. It's do we have an informed, energized, engaged citizens who, look, who's got the power in our country? Starts with we the people. That's who has the power. The feds don't have power, we do. We are the power. And if we don't pay attention, that's the threat to democracy. So, and to the republic. That's to me, I think that's a greater threat than any external threat. I'm not gonna talk politics, right? I'm gonna talk about the Broncos. Yeah.
Now tell us how you got your name.
You know, I wish I could say it's Jefferson Davis. I'm still kind of aggravated at my folks, because they didn't, you know, like, you went halfway, you didn't go the whole way. It's Jeffrey, but it opens doors in the South and it closes them real fast in the North. So when I'm training in Quantico, everybody in Virginia, it's like, wait, there's a highway named after you. I'm like, yeah, a couple statues too. I try not to go north of Virginia, because people kind of look at you kind of weird.
What's your middle name?
Yeah. I can tell you I'll tell you another good story. I'll tell you my story about my dad. My dad didn't tell me one war story. My dad was PFC Davis, a draftee into the Army, 4th Infantry Division, during the occupation part of Korea, 59-60, all right? So, the one story I remember from him was he was standing in formation one morning and the first sergeant said, everyone who's a rifle expert, you know, one step forward. And my dad grew up in the real poor, real country part of Oklahoma, and you ate what you caught or fished or shot. He was a good shot. So him and a couple other guys stepped forward. All right, well, who knows how to drive a Jeep? It's just like a tractor. My dad, you know, he gets to step forward again. He's like, all right, Davis, you're the regimental mailman now. And he's like, what? And he said it was the best job he ever had in his life, because everyone was always happy to see him, and everyone didn't mess with him because they knew they'd get their meal last if they did. Everyone left him alone because he got a Jeep, a rifle, and he did his own thing. He said it was beautiful. No one ever hassled me, and I got my own Jeep and got to do what I want. And I said, well, Dad, that's a great war story. You know, you did your part for national security. I was kind of hoping for something, you know, more exciting like John Wayne, but I still love you. It's like, okay.
It's okay to volunteer sometimes.
You know, and that's to that story and that point. Every one of us, no matter what it was, we did our job. And look, some people, it's their job to put a flag on top of Mount Suribachi, and God bless them. You know, I met 5 of them last week down in Arvada. They're great Americans. They will all tell you, I was just doing my job. They say, go up there and do it. It doesn't matter what your job is. What matters is you served. You served. And that's what our nation should focus on, and that's what I'm grateful for, is your service. All right, the photographer's here. Maybe one more question.
No, just keep talking.
Too much talking, not enough conversation. Yes. That's my wife. My wife is here. Yes, we are.
I hope you can forgive me for asking this question, but I love this story. Outside of training,
Yeah.
have you ever, on purpose or otherwise, had to fire an air defense weapon?
Yeah, so I think I'll save that story for home. Come on. Yeah, no, I'll tell it. It was September 29th. September 29th of 1990. My air defense platoon, it was the battery had two air defense platoons, support platoon, maintenance platoon. I had one of the platoons. We'd started Desert Shield in Saudi Arabia. They said one of the main air bases was going to be in Bahrain. We need you to go there for a while. So we went to Bahrain. We were on top of a butte overlooking the air base in Bahrain. And the rule was, you're at battle stations, you know. Why? Because you don't know when Saddam's gonna attack. And he would probe the border with aircraft every day just to see what Saudi Arabia and the coalition would do. So, at battle stations, but one of the things we had to do is conduct routine maintenance. I mean, just because you're, I mean, Navy guys know this, you're underway, you're at battle stations, you know, that doesn't mean maintenance stops. You know, routine maintenance continues even if you're at battle stations. So what we did is we took half the platoon offline, made those missiles cold, and the other half stayed at battle stations. So it's ready to engage. And you do your maintenance. So in September, they had not instituted something called stop loss yet. And basically stop loss means no matter where you are in your enlistment, you're not going anywhere, you're stuck. All right? You're stuck for the duration. All right, well, before that, you were, whenever your contract was up, you left. So there was kids that we took over in August and early September that only had a month to go on their enlistment, but we took them because we needed them and they wanted to go. They rotated home to exit the military. Well, stop loss had hit and we were like, we're shorthanded. So there was a big influx of people from the States, the second wave of folks who we'd never seen before, never trained with before, didn't know who they were. They were just, you know, supposed to be qualified airmen. So they came on board. Well, we're trying to integrate them into our team. And we had a young kid, Lance Corporal Sergi, who just doing what he could do. I mean, he thought he was doing right. We were doing some checks and he threw the wrong switch. And the missile lifted off. And I look at it and I'm like, I was standing outside the van when it happened. You know, it was this moment where like, that's bad. So I open the door and I'm yelling, you know, we have a destroy push button, you hold it and it'll destroy the missile in flight. I'm like, hit destroy. And I can remember this like it was yesterday. Corporal Stouffer, Corporal Monty Stouffer from Nebraska, Corporal Jim West from New Mexico, Corporal Dan Armena from Southern California, looking at me with their just stunned mullet looks on their face. Because that, you know, wasn't supposed to happen. And I'm telling them, hit destroy. And it's like, it doesn't come out like that. It's more like, hit destroy. And everything is slow motion. And I jump in the van, hit the destroy push button, it blows up. And right then I thought, where's Corporal Zile? Because Corporal Zile was my launcher marine. And so I ran out to the launcher. Zile is covered in dust and scrapes and rocks. And he said, what happened? And I'm like, I don't know. So we did an investigation and Lance Corporal Sergi had thrown the wrong switch because he hadn't been trained with our unit and following the thing. So, you know, fortunately, no harm, no foul. Everybody got yelled at really bad. And I thought I was going to get, you know, fired, but I didn't. It was horrible. It was the worst day of my life up to that point. But
Thank you for letting us.
my wife likes that story.
Makes it more human.
You know, sometimes crap happens like that, and you're just doing your best. Nobody was, Lance Corporal Sergi wasn't trying to do wrong. It just, sometimes crap happens.
So what happened?
Probably, you know, formal butt chewing, fill some sandbags and retrain on what to do right.
2 extra hours of training.
Yeah, we about a couple weeks later, we left for Saudi Arabia again to cover the northern assembly areas where folks were getting ready to train to go across. So you couldn't, I mean, you needed everybody. You needed all hands. So if you did screwed up, you got disciplined right there and come on, you're still on the team, let's go. So,
Let me just add one thing. When we had the first Gulf War and we started off deploying troops in Saudi Arabia, at that time I was with the headquarters for the Corps of Engineers, and we got the word that we're deploying a couple divisions suddenly out in the middle of the desert. Well, I'll tell you, there was a wild scramble because we had not built a large complex probably since the end of World War II.
Yep.
But we have these kind of very thick documents, which are basically design documents. And it gives you the bill of materials and everything. And you say, I need to deploy a division or a brigade or somewhere here, and I need motor pools, I need, you know, ammo dumps and everything. You kind of pull these sheets out, you know, and it gives you the basic. But the thing which we found most interesting is when we got to Saudi Arabia and we laid out where we were going to do it, the Saudis said, that's great, we want you here, but you need to sign a contract. This property, this belongs to someone. And we're not giving you full reign to kind of move in. You need to have a contract in place which gives you the authority to actually come here, even though we're asking you. Oh, you want trash, you know, place to get rid of that? Here's a contract. Laundry. We had to sign contracts for literally everything to support us putting troops there to help protect Saudi Arabia. And as part of that, then, when we left, we were on the hook to clean everything up. So war is different. Similarly for us back now in Iraq, you're moving into a country which has an organized government of some capacity. You have people who are more than welcome to have us there, but it's not for free. And I'd be willing to bet in Iraq, you know, in Afghanistan, there are elements of that as well. So, and we're all over the place. We're in Africa. You know, we recently deployed a Patriot missile battery to wherever, I think Saudi Arabia or somewhere. And I'd be willing to bet we had to sign some contract to give authority for us to plot that down in someone's backyard. So it's changed, the whole environment for war. You know, what you've seen, and everything you don't see, it is certainly much different.
War of lawyers.
You know, the things that, no matter what conflict you're part of, they're the same. You know, some of your friends don't get to come home. And, you know, that's who you remember on Memorial Day. You know, I'll remember guys like Ben Palmer on Memorial Day. You know, friends that didn't get to come home. You remember the good times with your comrades, because nothing builds closeness like shared adversity. And you'll remember that. You'll remember that you were part of something bigger than yourself, and doing something, trying to help, something that was trying to be good and help, that was bigger than you. No matter what conflict you're part of, that's all the same. And that's why I think you see veterans' hats and shirts, and there's pride in what you did, and it should be that way. It's to remember those that you served with that didn't get to come home. It's to remember that you were part of something bigger than yourself, and to remember the comrades and the bonds of friendship and camaraderie that you had when you were fighting together. I really appreciate being here with you today, and I sincerely mean it when I say I stand on the back of giants who went before me that made our military great, and all I tried to do is, when it was on my watch, not screw it up. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We appreciate you joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let's take pictures and eat donuts.
Marines, come on up.
Yes.